Welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And today I just feel kind of triggered as I see New Agers channeling the gods. Because right now, channeling angels isn't popular. So, ever since the book became popular, mainstream, the Book of Ra, the Law of Oneness, uh, I those people who still have a lot of religious stuff going on, but then want to break away from it, end up in this giant pool called the New Age spirituality, and they're like channeling the gods. And for me, that's very triggering. I feel like it's misappropriating other people's culture. And yes, they've turned into myth and legend, and they are archetypes, and you can channel those archetypes. But I still feel like it's we have our own special connection with the gods. So I got triggered when someone said they were channeling Athena and her message for the collective. And then I was like, I like Athena. I think she's pretty cool. Um, and I have my own mythology on how Athena is actually Medusa and how the whole story. So, the myths and the legends, I always just take as a reference point. Um, I'm just going to throw it out there. There's a lot of non magical people, muggles, will use the Harry Potter terminology as a template to. And when non magical people start playing with magic, I think we get a whole bunch of garbage, misleading information. We get religious type thinking, cult type thinking, and it messes the purity of it up. It can be very misleading and make your journey of personal awakening more difficult. It's kind of putting something between you and source. And I feel like we see that with alien conspiracies. So, conspiracy theorists, I think a lot of people. So, at the Temple of Delphi, it says, Know thyself. There's another axiom that basically translates in, Can you handle the truth for the questions you're asking? And this happens all the time. Way back when, I used to be a card reader psychic channel, okay? And people would ask questions that they can't handle the answer to. Is my boyfriend gonna leave me? Yes. Why? Because he's cheating on you with another person. And then they go into crisis right at my table. And you would think that if you have the ability to ask the question, then you also have the ability to handle the answer. But in Western modern society, uh, mainstream society is emotionally immature. They're stunted, you know, and there's no critical thinking, there's no emotional sobriety, there's no mental discipline to handle answers that are bigger than the individual. So, how did we get in this mess? Well, we spiritually bypassed and left that all up to God. We left that up to institutionalized, organized religion. We left that up to other institutions to govern the masses. And at the individual level, people haven't seen themselves as powerful. People, you know, so, like if I name drop the word prayer, you get triggered, you have an idea of what it is, and then you might say, oh, I don't believe in prayer. And I'm like, Because what we see in non magical people, non creative people, non spiritual people, is someone folding their arms and asking for what they want, or making it a slumber party, making it a group event, and everyone showing up in a building, singing kumbaya to a something that no one knows exists. Okay? And then your reasonable, practical, logical mind goes, what is the point? What is going on? How does this serve them? There's like an emotional elevation, and they leave having a little bit more faith that maybe tomorrow their bills will be paid and so won't die. And no one is looking, no one is probing, no one is coming up with formula to understand this thing called life, this thing called death. And so, are we just like going around in circles? Are we like just circling these real issues, you know, and not really? We're doing a whole bunch of doing, but it really wasn't designed to take responsibility, unpack it, and deal with it. And so, in New Age circles, we get this idea that beings that we do not know of are somehow keeping the planets working and comets from hitting our planet and everyone in check and everyone in line. Like there's a superpower organizing and controlling for the benefit of all of us, and we're all safe. So we get a whole bunch of stories that bottom line out when you sift through all the garbage. It's just someone, a mouthpiece, giving lip service, saying you're safe and it's okay. And they'll use the language that is popular, or they'll use some more ancient language and models. So it's a hodgepodge of stuff, and it kind of only works if you don't have a basis understanding of hermetic science. So and so it's not fair. So I'm looking at it going, this is misappropriated. They should all be in jail. Um, you know, there's like they're misleading minds, they're misleading hearts, they're extending someone's journey. And then we always have these alibis, these permission slips to get out of taking responsibility. Well, if you get the guru you get is the guru you deserve, they say. It's creating discernment. It's helping you. And I'm like, no. Once again, we're spiritually bypassing the harm that you're doing now that you found out that you're kind of a false god. You're making yourself into a god. You're idolizing the idols. You're misusing the tools. And so in occult science, uh, in hermetics, there's a scientific element. And part of the scientific is you're testing a theory, but you don't like take sides. It may or may not work. And yes, you can. You can be like, oh man, I believe in gravity, but I'm also open to there not being gravity. And I'm open to the unknown. So let's test this. Let's keep an open mind and discover and see. And we're not just looking. So it's like a religious agenda is trying to prove a point, and it's very polarized. And so you think the scientists might have an agenda. I need to prove that the male species brains are wired differently and therefore they're all jerks. And so, that's an example of someone having like maybe a personal belief, a bias, an agenda, and they do all this scientific research to prove it. Well, that's less than half the equation. you know the other half. Let's now, so even the test can be biased and the results can be biased, and you're getting misinformation, even though so you're using a technical methodology, but your intention, your agenda, your belief system, the motivating driving force is very polarized, and we get a lot of misinformation. And then we say, well, we should then also test the women and see how their brains are different. And well, that's still polarized, and it's still giving us not the full story. They're like, but I tested the white, I tested the black, I tested the true, I tested the false. I'm like, yeah, this is a duality model, but there's a third element called other, called something totally different. And so if we don't test all three angles, all three, it's never two, it's always three. So, yes, two sides of the same coin, right? Did you know there's three sides to a coin? That little round ring around it, the solidness of it all, that's actually a side. And actually that's a perfect side because it's not flat. Whoa. So you could call that the quantum level, or just a whole nother perspective. So, Einstein said it takes a different mind to solve it. The average non magical person, the majority of humans who are spiritually bypassing, using, putting their faith in institutions and whatever, pedestalizing, giving all that power away, they're living on both. They're only looking at one of the faces of the coin, and then it's like a revolution that they even see the other side. Then they think they're woke as AF, and they missed the third face of the coin, the round edge, that has dimensionality. And what's so perfect about it is it's round. You're measuring a curve, so it's non-linear. So, and so I would say that would be the magical, that would be the truly enlightened, to honor and see all three faces of the coin. It is all one. That's the paradox. So some people are still looking at the polarity and going, that's the paradox, but they can't resolve it in synthesis with the third edge of the coin. So if you've noticed in my videos, they're very, I would say, spatial. The thoughts are constructed into symbols, and they're looked at from different angles. So an example of this is I said in one of my videos, uh, you can have a pyramid, like a pyramid has all five, is a pentagram. And they were like stumped. And they were like, what? And then I had to show them, when you tilt the pyramid on an angle, you see 5 points. And that is your pentagram. So that would be like taking a concept of fire, air, water, earth, and spirit, flattening it out into the 5-pointed star, and then repositioning it spatially in space. So we're using that third side of the coin, the round, flat rounded part, and now we're seeing it starting to be more dimensional, height, width, and depth. And so with that ability, we were able to turn the pyramid, and we saw 5 points. And so if you feel triggered using a 5-pointed star, if you feel triggered, use a pyramid. Okay? So, and this is the magic of the wizard, to see things from different perspectives, different views. This is like fourth dimensional thinking, literally. And then we gain insights and we further our own self-knowledge. So it's actually really fun. So I do this with astrology and find hidden angles. And then I take that knowledge and I apply it to my tarot. So you work with systems and you work with perspectives, and they open up hidden pathways and doors. And this ability to synthesize using multiple perspectives, seeing things, from different views and angles. And so you're a little bit flexible with your belief systems. You're willing to turn things upside down, backwards, and inside out, like I told you in my other videos. As above, so below, as within, so without. This is the recipe to unfold yourself, to be the lotus. We say the world is backwards, you know, it's all messed up. So good, do it in reverse, and then you will un-F yourself, and then you'll have the awakening. But this is very important when it comes to uh, moving past your own personal reality, moving into a larger reality. Um, and so, for everything that we describe and discover and create a model of, it also slash objectifies into a consensus of believable facts and truth. We just created a prison for ourselves. And so it's like, I can finally see this now. And then that thing that gave you freedom for a moment, it gave you an understanding, then becomes a prison wall and you can't go beyond it. And so, I mean, that's so it's really weird. It's a gift that gives, but it's a gift that takes. So, which leads into the most important part of this, the Zen truth, this age-old wisdom of, if your cup is full and I keep pouring tea into it, it's overflowing and you're not getting any new tea. It's just pouring out. You can only consume so much. And so if you want more tea, get a bigger cup, is something that no one is pointing out. you know so the tea ceremony is really great. Simple wisdom, simple truths drawn from practical reality and nature can be astounding when you apply them to your personal experience. So either drink that water, dump it out, or get a bigger cup, or say stop, knowing you've had too much information. And yes, I have a tendency to keep pouring, so maybe you should get a few cups, you know, or maybe you can handle it all. So I can calm down as I talk myself out of being triggered, going back to understanding, going back to wisdom, love, wisdom, and power. So let's get back to the point. So we are so now we've now understand that which we know, that which we define, that which we have seen, the images, the archetypes, the patterns limit us. So therefore we must dissolve them, and then go beyond, transcend, move through the known into the unknown. And I feel like this is what the seeker does. This is what the spiritually hungry people do. We have that urge, and it's, in a weird way, it's kind of mysterious. Some people say, oh, we're going back to source. Other people is, you're falling in love with yourself. You're going back to wholeness and oneness and completeness. And I'd be like, yeah, this is all true. These are all different facets of the same gemstone. And all paths are one. But then once we discover and explore one of those facets, that urge happens again, and we're off on another endless journey of multiple perspectives. But what happens when you see all the perspectives? You see the diamond for what it is. So I'm just saying, channeling archetypes, one, the reality of it is you're probably only channeling the self that you do not know, which for a lot of people isn't actually their higher self. It is just the other side of the coin of themselves. And they haven't even tapped into the roundness of the coin, that side, the third side of the coin. So take the information, know that not everyone is mentally stable and sane. Okay. And also know that insanity might be a different level of logic, but it's not. So there can actually be two types of, not really crazy and insanity, uh, but when you don't understand the complexity and the level that that certain mind is on with their abilities to perceive, maybe the breadth of it, if you're not at that level, you could see it as, you might label it as crazy because you can't follow the moves. It's not linear. It doesn't make sense to you. So you might throw it out, or you might put it in that information into the same bin as that which is actually corroding, that which is actually falling apart at the seams and is kind of going through a death process. And it also looks crazy, and it also looks insane, and it also looks so morbid and deranged. So judgment becomes something you have to learn to deal with. And you have to learn to say, okay, I might be judging this. I might be putting these two things together. They look very similar. They seem like opposites, but then when we really start to examine them, they're not. Um, but anyways, so I guess that was just like it was a little tangent that is still all a part of this, because who are we to judge? Who? So understanding and wisdom uh, is a tool that you have to use, but at the exact same time, it's a very frustrating path when there's a lot of illusion, delusional. So self delusion is mistaking one thing for another. And so we don't understand well enough. So, luckily, our ancestors have passed down a wonderful roadmap called the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah. The mystical tree of life, or the universal tree of life, anyone and everyone can apply it. It's 10 spheres in kind of like a descending path that explains dimensions, it explains veils, it explains how things are created, it also explains how things are destroyed, the yin and yang, the light, the dark, the good, the evil, the planets, the numbers, the colors. And so it is the master key to unlock the mysteries. Now, in order for it to be a universal pattern, it has to represent the whole. So, our solar system is a universal pattern, but it's more so to just our little solar system is a reflection of man. So, the human body can be put on there like a template. So, what's really interesting is we have what's called the three pillars. And the middle pillar actually serves as the tension where that applies. So the yin and yang pillars can fall onto each other, and it creates a tension, you know. So there's an energetic tension, kind of like Jacob's ladder, a lightning path. And then they have what's called the path of the serpent, which is winding. So there are serpents that are all up in trees. There's serpents that are in water. We can find snakes almost anywhere and everywhere. There's a whole island full of snakes, you know. So it's more common in Asia to have snakes in the trees and jumping around from branch to branch. And so uh having a snake in a tree is actually a universal symbol, you know, or finding a snake under a tree, down in the roots, or up in the branches, or, and so we can think of the tree of life, we can think of the tree in Eden. The tree is a universal symbol that man, for millions of years, has worked with. We work with wood, you know, we shape it into houses, we make paper, all kinds of things. So the universe, the versatility, the usability, so the utility of the tree and the symbol is a really great tool to use. So you could say our universe is a tree, humanity is a tree. We can superimpose the image of the tree. The tree has a trunk, it has roots, and it's that center that is really so important and vital to the tree. But then there's no point to have a trunk to a tree without leaves and without fruits and without a root system. So we see a tree is kind of useless without, like, so we start to see a tensegrity model where all the parts and pieces are used together to maintain the whole. And so the tree can be used as a symbol of wholeness. And we see different levels of a tree. We see a root system. We see just the trunk area designed to kind of keep it away from predators or whatever, who knows. And then we have branches, then we have leaves, then we have fruits, then we have seeds. So we see evolution. We see a path, you know, a roadmap of personal growth. You know, the fruit could fall, the seeds could go into the earth, and it could sprout a new tree. And it usually kind of starts with roots, you know, and so we can see the generational moving through time, moving through the aging and dying. And so the tree is such a wonderful, so it's not stuck into a religion, it's not stuck. Uh, Anyone and everyone can apply it to their own myths, their own personal story. So then it becomes universal because of its versatility and usefulness into all stages of our lives. You know, you can there's paintings of trees going through the four seasons. You know, the four stages of life. And so the tree is an amazing symbol to use. But anyways, so then once we start to, I love to make things geometrical because it seems to make them non-representational. You don't get hung up and triggered and stuck. uh you know, like if God was a triangle, or some other, a cube, if God was a hexagon, you then see God in a whole new way. But when you make him a white man with a beard, you see it in a certain way. Or when you make it, like, you know, and so the ability to change the symbols out. So we have definitions, we have meanings, you know, we have like words. So the word God, and then you give it a definition or an image, and you say Mel, now you see it in a whole new light. You take that same word, and then so you can change the definitions or you can change the word. So some people change the word but keep the definition. Instead of saying levels of reality and the 10 spheres, they say the 10 and like the dimensions, or they say the vels, or they say the densities, you know. And so in oneness theory, it's a double-edged sword. You can say all the gods, all the angels, and all the demons, and it's all one, and you're channeling source, and that includes you, so you're only channeling you, the mirror-like nature of reality. That's a very simplified thing, because maybe that's all one, yes, but at the exact same time, all not one. A lot of these channels are channeling their own personal reality, their own personal higher self, their own limitation. We don't know if they've busted through that and are actually into universal. And then we go, but it all makes sense and they're all saying the same thing, Onyx. And I'm like, yeah, because they have a mass consensus. They have a mass agreement. And in order for you, so their story they're telling you is the permission slip, is the key that then now your stream is leading into their stream, and now you're going down that river with all those emotions and all that thoughts, and you're like, yeah, we're going somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, through the power of agreement, but not reality. Reality doesn't have to agree with us. Reality doesn't conform to our science. Our science doesn't conform to reality. So our definitions, our words that we create, that we perceive, is limited. So you have to be able to get to that point saying, I know nothing. And knowing nothing, I know more of nothing. And then, so there has to be a point where you're just open minded. And then you take it with a grain of salt, you take it with balance. What everyone is saying, like, I feel like there's a point in your journey where you don't need to know the truth, where the truth isn't a life jacket. Feeling protected, feeling like you're in, like, you're going somewhere, you have a purpose, isn't your little life jacket anymore. And then you truly, I feel like, are on your way to seeing. And this video got a little bit long, but I think it was like my other videos. I intend to do like a 20-minute video, and then it turns out to be 3, because I have to kind of like lay down the foundation. But so this first video is basically, I'm saying loosen up and know that most stuff that's being talked about is based on old teachings, but they're just skimmed through. And then when people don't understand it, they change the names, they change the words, they change the meaning, they change the definition to suit their level, where they're at. But they don't really stick with the subject. They don't claim the source that they're referencing. And so I think integrity is important. But then it goes into something deeper, which was the whole point of the video. It goes into what's called the second sphere. So the first sphere is where we are in physical world, in the 3-dimensional plane, from the perspective that you have, from the limitation that you have. And limitation isn't bad, because that's how we experience life. We need the limitation of time and space in order to experience moment by moment. We need limitation to experience individuality, which creates our personal perspective. So limitation has a positive and a negative, and applied appropriately, it can work both ways. A negative could be to your advantage, and a positive could be to your hindrance. So, which goes into the second. So the first sphere is Earth. The second sphere is the moon, which represents the mirror-like nature of reality, illusion, deception, the subconscious, but it's also representing a limitation. And that limitation is, the moon reflects back the images that you create in your subconscious. And so in a weird way, it's a mirror, but it's also an image. And so that's kind of what the whole point was